whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
Hello everyone, welcome to Patriots Across the Pond, a little bit of Monday respect, and today it's not with Stu and Elisa, it was with Stu and Mark. Unfortunately, Elisa has been called away to an appointment that she needed to take care of, so Mark has kindly come out of retirement, hopefully not for the last time, today to host the show with me. But we've got an amazing guest today, Christie Hutcerson, and she has been doing some absolutely amazing work in the fight against human trafficking. And I'd just like to read a bit from Christie's website. Christie is the founder, president and spokesperson for Women Fighting for America, LLC. She is widely recognised as a geopolitical security expert with extensive knowledge. Christie is a powerful and dynamic speaker within the freedom movement. 100 plus border ops missions, 2,500 plus miles on the border. Christie is a frontline fighter for freedom. She is one of the only Americans who has travelled the entire southern border and hundreds of miles of our forgotten northern border in her quest to save America. Christie has led over 100 border missions. She has seen firsthand the devastation of illegal immigration, child and human trafficking, organ trafficking, massive amounts of lethal drugs entering the USA, and the atrocities committed by the transnational criminal organisations. Christie, thank you for coming on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, well, this is going to be a real decent journey, because what we always like to do when we have a new guest on our show is just you tell your whole story, how your awakening happened, and we get into that. I've got a little 6-minute video of yours that we can play in a little moment if you like. But Mark, how are you, sir?
I am doing well. Too bad Elise couldn't be here. This is the result of her deciding to go trans, and this is what ended up. So we'll be fixing it after the show. But no, very glad to be here. I first met Christie at the Reawaken America tour, and the stuff that she was doing back then was phenomenal. And she continues to do this hard work. When you talk about people getting involved, and you talk about local action equals national impact, you don't necessarily have to go and risk your life like Christie does, going down to the border and going below the border. But there's so many things that you can do to be involved locally. And this is what this lady has done. And she's done a phenomenal job with it, putting her own life at risk and doing the hard deeds, going into really, really dangerous territory, dealing with really, really sick and dangerous people. And, this might be a good time before we get into more of Christie's background to show the video.
Okay.
It's important. It's eye-opening.
Okay, brilliant. We'll do that now.
This rope is used to tie up children and women to these trees, tying their hands together so they can't struggle and fight and claw back.
And they take turns.
This is gang raping, guys. This isn't, just your typical. This is violent gang rape.
The condoms and the lube were right next to the kid's shirt and the socks. The kid's socks. Sick. All this stuff just left.
Another thing that's really just heartbreaking is what they're called rape trees. And you'll find those, and basically the coyotes will rape the women. And then they take their bras and their panties, and then they throw them up on the tree branches for others to see. It's kind of like a trophy thing.
We've also found and discovered in another area where if the woman did fight back, they pick up a rock and they bash their skulls in. And then we find the bones later on in the desert because the coyotes and stuff probably drag them off.
The story is that the cartels have operational control of our border from the Gulf of Mexico to Big Bend. And the Democratic Party and the current leaders in the White House refuse to do their duty to secure the border of the United States, leaving Texas exposed, in danger, our children facing the horrors of an opioid epidemic, fentanyl up 800% in Texas.
Fentanyl seizures at the El Paso sector surged 4,000% over the past 3 years.
These drug cartels, these human traffickers, they are incredibly emboldened to the point where they feel that they can do this without consequence, where they feel they can continue profiting off of trafficking people across these borders that are essentially open.
It is the first duty of the government to secure your borders and defend a sovereign nation.
The Biden-Harris administration has an open door policy. The reality is that people are being let in and crossing the border every single day.
Wake up. This affects you. The humanitarian thing to do is to shut our borders down now.
Yes.
The previous policies were working. They weren't perfect, but they were working. And we have the statistics to prove so. It's not about who's in this office, about the policies. Because I'm not political. This isn't a political issue. This is a human issue.
The terrorist organizations that are looking to do harm to America are exploiting those. We've caught Iranians, Russians, Chinese, Iraqis, Yemenis, you name it, we've caught them here in this border, right here. And we're just seeing such an influx between body loads, narcotics loads, and stuff like that. The cartels control everything, right? The coyotes come bringing these people up, leave women, children, old people, you name it, to die as they're coming across the border. If they can't keep up, they're told, hey, just wait here, we'll send help for you. Help never comes.
This highly sophisticated drone belongs to private company Strategic Response Partners, who has been working under the direction of Women Fighting for America founder Christie Hutcerson and with local law enforcement amidst the migrant crisis.
We're heading back towards the river right now.
We were with her team overnight in La Jolla as the drone used thermal imaging to track a group of runners who crossed illegally. Hutcherson's team relayed coordinates to the Border Patrol agents who quickly closed in on the group, ultimately apprehending all of them. Hutcherson tells us this is about more than illegal immigration.
throwing bags.
Drug trafficking has gone up over 450 something percent. That's a lot of drugs coming in, flooding into our street.
There were more than 45,000 migrant encounters in the sector in October. That's a 157% increase over the same time last year.
The drugs don't just stay here at the border. Within 42 to 72 hours, they're in cities all across the United States. Christie Hutcerson with Women Fighting for America. I'm on the front lines and in the trenches every day to bring you guys the truth and the information that you need to help save America. As you can tell from some of the footage that I've shown here today. But what I'm here to talk about is it's time for us to unite, for we the people to get in this fight to save the heart and soul of our nation. We have a border crisis. We have a national security crisis on our hands. And the answer lies within each and every one of us. Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to stand and come join us in the fight to save our nation? I'm a military mom and I'm a small business owner and I'm a patriot who saw the evils that are taking place. And I got up and I did something about it. Each and every one of us has that spark inside of us. The answer's with we the people, nobody else but us. Our founding fathers knew it best. They said it's a government for the people, by the people. So my fellow patriots, will you stand? Will you answer the call right now? We are in a pivotal moment of history. Rise up, join us, take back America. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Hard-hitting, but a beautiful video. I'd just like to say, I think you uploaded that about 3 years ago, didn't you? So obviously that during the Biden administration.
Yeah, the Biden administration, who purposefully flooded this nation with not just illegals, but with force multiplier of criminal activity, cartel activity, militia groups, and very bad actors around the country, including proxies of Iran, to infiltrate and to wreak havoc and destroy the interior of the United States from within. And you're seeing that as well, Stu, in Europe. You're seeing this model play out for the last 4 or 5 years. Even look at what just happened in Spain. And one of the most important things from a national security perspective, because that is my background, is security and defense. You have to understand a nation is not secure and a nation is not safe when you have individuals from countries coming from all over the world unvetted, where you don't understand where they come from, where their ideologies are. And this isn't about a race thing or a cultural. When you have a nation and you have a foundation of that nation, a lot of these individuals, I've worked in the Middle East, I've worked in third world countries. A lot of times their educational systems, their background, their culture, their belief system do not line up with the free Western world. And when you have a collision of that sort, it's going to fester underneath the skin like a blister, and then eventually it's going to start oozing, right? And that's what you're seeing, right? Because you see individuals who are hurting people in the streets, who are raping, who are carrying machetes. We don't have that same ideology, and we have to understand people who come into a nation must be vetted. We need to understand what their background is, what their ideologies are, before you just let them in and open up your front door to anybody.
Well, exactly. In certain cultures where it's quite okay for a 60-year-old man to marry a 9-year-old girl, and you know that you move that into a society where that is not allowed to happen, things are going to clash, aren't they?
They are. And unfortunately, you're also seeing this in America play out. I just did a huge comprehensive report back in the beginning of June about the DSA, and you're seeing that play out in American elections right now in this organization. But what happens is these different ideologies and cultures, and they have an agenda, and they have a 50-year plus plan. They're very patient. So they will infiltrate into a country, into a nation, until they have the numbers that they need. And then you start seeing those individuals running for offices, whether it's, and they start at the lower level and they work their way up. And then those ideologies start taking over that country's moral foundation and where they are. And you're seeing that in Europe, you're seeing that in England right now.
Especially if you remove freedom of speech from the native of that, the sovereign people of that country at the same time.
Yes, that's correct. You know, America right now is at a very interesting cross point. And I've spent over 6 years at the southern northern borders, in and out of Mexico, Central and South America, even in Europe, looking at the migrant crisis. And when you look at the migrant crisis, and again, I have a different lens. So let me tell your audience a little bit about who I am really quick so they can understand. So I worked in the private sector, but the private sector dealing with security, defense. And so our federal government would contract the company that I was working with to do very high level projects, including, by the way, we helped with the troop drawdown in Iraq and Afghanistan under Obama. We've won awards. We've done a lot of things at very high levels. And so I took that, and how I got started as Women Fighting for America, because I know you asked me that early on. In 2019 and 2020, there was that transition year that we had the election cycle. But being somebody who has worked in the DC area for a very long time, I was seeing things that were unsettling. The infiltration at the highest levels from an interior perspective. So I call it enemies within. And you started seeing the erosion. And it doesn't matter. And again, I'm going to be very clear about something. It doesn't matter if you're for American politics. I'll use that for an example. We have the Republican Party, we have the Democratic Party, and we have the independents. Across the board, nobody is immune to corruption. There's corruption in all party systems. And so I was seeing it across the board. And in 2020, when Biden got elected, and COVID happened and all of this stuff, I knew, number one, COVID and positive, negative, you're seeing it play out right now, how the lies spread and the damage that it did. I knew that that was going to be utilized as a control mechanism to see exactly how far the world was going to go under compliance. And I knew that they were lying. And they were lying about the border. They were lying about letting immigration in. They were lying about the system. And I said, you know what? Our country was founded on Judeo-Christian foundations. And we have to get back to the central of that, the Constitution. And I wanted to expose corruption at all levels and educate people without bias. Because if this nation is going to survive, we have to have a real clear conversation, an honest conversation on all of the political parties and what really was going on.
Yeah.
Well, Christie, when you look back at this progression that's gone on, you think back to World War II, and we defeated fascism and got past all of this nasty stuff. But what had already started and what really progressed after that was the degradation of our laws, of our foundation, so that more and more people were arguing more so about what their rights were than what the laws and orders actually are. And those rights got very, very misinterpreted and over-exaggerated. And it became a point where any transgression had an excuse to it, including you can't deny people coming into this country. That's what this country was founded on. Yeah, but there are laws and there are legal and illegal ways of doing that. And from that schism, it just grew larger and larger and larger. And that's why we have all these different arguments back and forth about legals and illegals, about what crimes should put you in jail and what don't. And since you founded WFFA, have you noticed, especially back in 2020 and 2021, once the Biden era began, the alleged Biden era began, watching that really kicked into high gear?
Yeah, our founding fathers, they never expected. So when the Constitution, I believe, was written, and you can go back and really study that Constitution foundation, whether it's birthright citizen, whether it's illegals and migrants coming into this nation, America is a country of immigration. My family, I'm a Russian Jew on my mother's side. My family fled Stalin. My great grandfather, my papa, he was a young boy, literally fled Stalin. He's written in Ellis Island. And I had family members, unfortunately, who weren't so lucky, and they were murdered and killed in the atrocities. And my foundation of that is because my papa would tell us the stories. And so history is very important to understand, because if you don't know where you come from, you don't know who you are as a nation. And to try to erase your history is also dangerous, because you have to understand that foundation. But the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, they expected when people came over here and migrated into this country, that their allegiance was going to be to the United States. You bring your culture, you bring your values from those other nations, but then you leave those behind at the door, and then you become an American citizen, and you become loyal to the United States. You can't be loyal to two countries at the same time. It just doesn't work. You have to decide. And I think right now the founding fathers will be rolling over, and I know they're rolling over in their graves, to see how we've diluted their constitutional message, right? And America's the greatest experiment ever in the face of the earth. And we do protect the innocent. And that's the reason why we have to maintain, and whether it's in England or other countries, you have to maintain the structure of your governmental system and who you are in your foundation, so you can remain a strength and a beacon for the rest of those individuals who you're trying to protect, and that's your citizens.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have learned, over the last 10 years, 20 years especially, the fact that so many people in the US Congress are, dual citizenship with Israel, and their alignment doesn't necessarily align with the United States, does it? It aligns with Israel and other places.
Well, I'm not going to pick out Israel here, because there's a lot of controversy right now about allegiance to Israel and not allegiance to Israel. I'm a biblical foundation person, and God is very clear. We are to protect Israel. Israel is God's chosen country. I believe God chose the United States of America as the protector, not just of Israel, by the way, but for the rest of the creation that he created. So I think there's a lot of misinformation and against Israel right now, and I think that's wrong. And so not any country is perfect. The United States is not perfect. President Donald J. Trump is not perfect in his policies. I don't agree with everything he does. I don't agree with everything that Benjamin Netanyahu does or any other leader does. What we have to look at is you strip away the foundation of that nation and what they're trying to do. Israel has been attacked on October 7th. They were attacked unprovoked. Israel has been attacked over the last 75 years since it's been since the country was given back to them. And positive, negative, or whatever you want to say, you have to understand Middle Eastern history for you to understand where we are today. So that's a whole nother subject, but I would tell all of your listeners to truly go into and delve into true Middle Eastern history, so you understand where we became the Palestinian state. By the way, the Palestinians, there was never a state of Palestine. Whether that's positive, negative, that's the facts, that's the truth. And the Palestinians came from different factions within the Muslim countries from around it. So understand your history. But right now, on a global stage, we have a lot of individuals pitting against each other. And I think that that's where we need to stop and get rid of that narrative, because they want us to be, oh, we're against Israel, or you're for Israel, you're for the United States, you're against the United States, you're for the Muslims, you're against the Muslims, you're Islamophobic, all of these things, these labels that the enemy puts upon you. We don't, you're trans, you're not trans. Women, transgender men should be able to play in women's sports. So you see all of this division, right? It's all part of the same thing. Open borders, non-open borders. Illegals have the right to come here. They don't have the right to come here. That is a mechanism for the enemy to utilize to keep everybody divided, because when we're divided, we're constantly fighting, we're pitted against each other. They know that when the everyday average citizen of the world consistently is pitted against each other and controversial, that allows them, the bad players on the world stage, the globalists, to continue their agenda, because we're so busy over here fighting and infighting that we can't see what's truly going on. And we need to clear our lens, and we need to see we're not against each other. We're against this globalist ideology and this globalist movement to strip countries of their sovereignty. That's what migration is all about, by the way, because they're bringing in different individuals to vote, to strip the free Western world in the way of we think, get rid of the borders, to usher in a one world system. And that's really ultimately what we all need to be focusing on.
Yeah, and I think what most people know is the globalists have hidden behind everyone. They are everywhere, and they pretend to be people that they're not. And exactly, you say, divide and conquer.
Yes,
Well,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, divide and conquer goes back to the days of Caesar. You know, it's the most perfect battle strategy ever developed, and we've fallen for it. And the problem isn't the people of these countries, be it the people of Israel, the people of Russia, the people of China. It's their governments and the people who control their governments who aren't even part of their country necessarily. That's where the problem is. And of course, my favorite place, the media, because they're the biggest and most important arm of the cabal, because they can get the message out to millions of people in the blink of an eye.
The media is, and again, if you start looking at the media and who all of the individuals, whether it's the newscasters or whether the conglomerates that own the media, start following the trail and the money line and the marriage line, you will see how infiltrated the media is. And even, you know, I see one of your listeners and she goes, "Oh, I'm out of here." And I'm sure it's because I started talking about Israel. Here's another problem. If you're that, if you're that weak that you cannot hear somebody else's opinion or give facts and then follow up with those facts, I'm not asking you to believe every word I say. I'm asking you to use the God-given brain that you got and go do your own due diligence. Stop regurgitating the things that you hear on any social media outlet, whether it's a podcast, but you have to go and do your own due diligence. And that means finding out the truth and the facts, not listening to somebody else all the time. And we should be able to have a conversation. All opposing views. It doesn't matter. One of the most important things I do, and again, I've been in the defense and national security for a very long time. I listen to every single individual's opinion, thought process, or where they're coming from. And the reason why is because if I turn somebody off, then I'm not going to be able to, number one, look at it from somebody else's lens, understand where they're getting their information from. So then I can go and do my due diligence, right? And delve into that to understand, is that truth? Is that fact? Or maybe they might have a really good point that I didn't realize from their lens. So when we cut each other off and stop listening, there's the danger. And that's, again, what the globalists want. They want us to not listen. They want us to immediately shut you down, turn you off and say, "Oh, that's it. You have a different opposing view. I'm not listening to this garbage anymore." And that is dangerous, my friend.
Well, that's why they go so strongly to skew your First Amendment, quote unquote, right. And that's something that's gone on for a lot longer than the internet's been around, for a lot longer than broadcasting has been around. That's been done through religious leaders. That's been done through political leaders. Again, divide and conquer. We can no longer, we're in a society globally where we can no longer converse, and we can never, ever seem to agree to disagree. Everybody's got an opinion. Everything's a fight and an argument. Nobody wants to listen and go, okay, I hear what you're saying. I don't agree with what you're saying, but I accept your point of view. It's always got to be a fight, and that was their goal.
Yeah. And Mark, you know, I can tell you most people are couch warriors, right? Most people have only traveled within a certain 200 to 300 mile radius of their home. I've been blessed. Because of the work I do, I've traveled all over the world. We've spent over 5.5 years in the Middle East working, living, our teams. I understand the different cultures. I've been out to the third world countries. I've been to Africa. I've been to the Middle East. I've been to Eastern Europe. I've seen firsthand how different governments operate, different ideologies, the people who live in those communities. And I think one of the worst things somebody could do is sit there and be an armchair warrior, and they've never walked outside of their country borders. Get outside, start looking at the different cultures. You will understand the lens that we come from and why we are able to make the assessments we're able to make. It's because I've seen it firsthand. Cultures are different, and they're different for a reason. And that's okay, but that's what makes us unique. But sometimes those cultures that make you unique don't blend with other societies. It's just that simple.
No, and it's a fact. And anybody who's been on alternative media, has browsed through alternative media, has seen videos of some, I don't like using the word journalists because they're not, but some alternative media podcasters who will go to events, get into crowds, and they're talking, and people recognize that they're not the same as they are. They're not protesting on the same side. They're not rooting for the same team. And they will get in their faces, blow whistles in their ears and this and that and the other. And as soon as the person reacts, that mob mentality kicks in, and you've got a lynching going on. We've seen all kinds of videos about that. And that, again, is simple communication. You don't agree with the person, you don't have to do what this person online just did here. You don't have to go and attack that person. You don't like it? Same thing on TV. Change the channel. You don't even have to get out of the bathroom. You got a remote control. Change the channel. You don't like what you're listening to. Same thing here. You don't like what you're listening to? Switch off. And if somebody is in front of you and they're saying something you don't like, turn around and walk away. Why do we have to react negatively? This is not advancing any of our causes. If you claim to be a patriot and you have zero tolerance for what's perfectly sensible and perfectly legal, just because it differs from your opinion, doesn't make you right, because at last check, we're not God. It's only one. And this is the problem.
Well, Mark and Stu, I love all people. I do. Again, I've been blessed to travel the world. I've been, my teams are incredible. We've seen some of the worst atrocities you could ever see. I have photographs on my phone right now that your audience, they couldn't handle. They would be crying. And so my teams have been, I've been on the front line. I'm not somebody who talks about it. I've been full on level 3+ vests, weapons drawn, and going into serious areas where there's some really bad people. I've seen the slaughterhouses where they've kidnapped and taken women and children and young boys to butcher them and sell their organs on the black market. I've seen the decapitated babies' heads. I've seen the rituals on the border where they've done the worst of the worst. The rape trees where women and our teams have been able to intercept and give over what we have done or found to law enforcement. And so, I've seen the worst of humanity, but I've also seen the best of humanity. Yeah. I'll give you an example. In my own family, I have a family member who is just incredible. She's a liberal. She believes in socialism and all of that. And you know what? We love each other, and we are able to have strong dialogue, different opposing views to discuss the why and why I believe what I believe and why she believes what she believes. And we're able to, at the end of the day, say, you know what? I love you anyway. I don't have to necessarily believe that view, but we're going to break bread together. And I think that's, if I could say anything else to everybody out here, stop the violence, stop the rhetoric. You can have an opposing view
but you can still sit down at the table and break bread together, because at the end of the day, that is powerful. And whether you believe that the right is evil or the left is evil, when you come together, you take away the power of those individuals who want to destroy the fabric of our countries, our civilization, because now the power is back in your hands, and they don't want that to happen. That's the reason why they want to keep the division. But we do have evil in this world. I've seen it.
Oh God, yeah, we know about that. And I just want to say, there's a lot of people saying a lot of things online, and I watch many people that people don't like watching, but I have to watch everyone to use my discernment and find out the bigger picture of what's going on. And I love Kate, by the way. She is a true patriot on our side. But I just want to say something. We've discussed the Q drops a lot on that over the last 10 years. But 2 drops, right? The Truth would put 99% of people in the hospital, and the Complete Picture would put 99% of Americans, the world, in a hospital. This should tell you that there's many people out there that are following certain things that have no idea what they were part of, right? And when all this truth comes out and this awakening properly happens, a lot of people are going to be in a lot of trouble for what they've believed over the years. But I will just leave that there.
Well, I agree. I mean, I speak the truth, and I don't care. I'm not politically correct, never have been. And I think that we have to understand what this is. And this is good versus evil. It's just that simple. This is good versus evil. And I'm going to speak the truth, whether it's telling people that you're wrong for attacking the Israeli people. I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about the Israeli people. Okay. That's, again, everyone I don't agree with, like I said, a lot of the government. I don't agree with President Donald J. Trump with everything he does. I don't agree with the people around him all the time giving him the advice, but that's okay. But I can tell you he's a disruptor. I can tell you Donald J. Trump, for the most part, 85% of every single thing he's done is to expose and pull the Band-Aid off of what people couldn't see, the festering of this globalist agenda. And Donald Trump, if you love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. If you're somebody over there in the pond says, oh my gosh, I love Donald Trump. Well, if you love Donald Trump, he's doing things to protect Israel. So if you trust in him, you have to trust that he understands things that you don't see, that you don't hear about Israel. And again, this isn't about the leadership. This is about the people of Israel, or about what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz in Iran. And I've sat there and I've read complete, very deep level briefings, intelligence briefings on what's going on. If you go to some of my professional profile, I don't put them always out on WFFA because, again, I'm in the security world. So I write briefs and intelligence briefs. So you can find that on my professional website, LinkedIn. But when you look at what's going on, it all connects. I call it the great spider web. And whether it's the mass immigration, the child trafficking, the drug trafficking, the cartels, the money laundering, Iran, believe it or not, your audience needs to understand all of this is interconnected, because players at the very highest levels are involved in some of these organizations. They are involved in the money laundering, how money gets laundered back. And by the way, war, anytime there is a war or instability, that is one of the biggest upticks in human trafficking, period. So Ukraine, huge human trafficking going on right now. In Gaza, trafficking. Every time you have a migrant surge at your borders, trafficking. And so it all correlates to each other. And there's a lot of money being made to fund very nefarious activities.
Yeah.
And there's one key phrase that we've heard for years already, and it falls right in. It's draining the swamp. And it's not just, and this is, I think, one of the things that escapes people all the time, especially here in the US, because that's the way they've been bred. That's the way that they think. This is not just a US problem. This is a global problem, and it has to be solved not by division, but by unity. We've kind of gotten off topic with all this, but let's get into why back in 2020 you formed WFFA.
Can I just ask you as well? Can you just, obviously you said in sort of 2020 when you did this, was that your awakening that you knew everyone was lying? Because you've sort of worked in that industry before. Had you had any sort of awakening before that was anything wrong and we were run by globalists and a secret hand behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, it's always been known to me that there's been a 75-year plus plan since World War II, and you can go. We don't have time to go into that, but there's the globalists have been very patient, and you go all the way back, and the powers to be knew that they could not destroy America from the battlefield, from a kinetic war perspective. So, and it has been said, the enemy has said it, the only way you can destroy America is from within. Well, how do you do that? You have a plan. You have an infiltration plan to disrupt and destabilize the very foundation that were made. So I've always known in the back of my head, but in 2019 and 2020, it actually started probably in 2015 when President Donald J. Trump came down that escalator. And working in DC with the Obama administration and shifting from Bush to Obama and then into the Trump, what we were seeing firsthand is how our own systems, whether it was the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, and all of these different apparatuses, and including, by the way, Congress and the Senate, started very nefarious activity as far as I'm concerned, and weaponizing the systems. And then you saw an uptick. You saw it in Obama, but then under Trump's presidency and then Biden, you just started seeing this upward trajectory of judiciaries being weaponized, right? The judiciary system. And that's fundamentally a problem, because once you start seeing that, that's pretty high level. Well, that's going to destroy the country if something drastic doesn't change to turn that around. And I think that was kind of when I started really seeing things. And, I'm coming from somebody who worked, our company worked within different agencies. And when I stepped off the plane, I was actually with my family at the time, and I stepped off the plane coming back from a personal trip overseas. And it was really bizarre because in Atlanta, it's one of the busiest airports in the world, and the international terminal was like a ghost town. And literally, I was thinking to myself, did the rapture happen? I was left behind, or am I in Todd Sterling's Twilight Zone? Then after Biden got elected, I got a phone call. I started doing some things. I founded Women Fighting for America. Leading up to the presidential election, I went on a bus tour, and it was about educating people about what was at risk for this nation. And it was benign. It was called Heal Our Land Bus Tour. And when the election, I believe, was nefariously, I believe there was a coup that actually did happen. And we're already seeing all of the statistics come out and to prove this. I got a phone call after 2 weeks into the Biden administration, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, we have people I have friends in Yuma, Arizona. Yuma is along the border. It's closer to California." And they said they're afraid to leave their home. And I said, "What do you mean they're afraid to leave their home?" And she started telling me about activity that had all of a sudden upticked. And then I had another call, and one out of Michigan about a boys' home being in a facility for a senior living being turned into a migrant center. And I started because, again, from my security lens that I have and the people I'm blessed to be around, we started delving into this, and we started connecting the dots that this was pre-planned, this was premeditated, all of it, and we had a bigger problem on our hands. So me and my teams went down to the border. I had a team of very special guys with very special skill sets, and we started looking into. And I didn't know what to expect, and neither did my team. But the more we started driving into Tijuana, Mexico, and then into Yuma, and then we started interviewing sheriffs, and we started interviewing business owners, and it started a big, huge picture started coming together, this puzzle. And we realized, wow, we're getting ready to have 4 years of something unprecedented. And this is about the switch to finalize the last blow to take over this country. And that's why I'm so thankful that we were able to have this disruptor of President Donald J. Trump come back in to stop what was going to happen.
And Christie, you just brought up an interesting point, something I did show on a couple of times. When we talk about sheriffs being the front line, basically, in any county of law enforcement, they have jurisdiction over pretty much so everybody. And we talk about constitutional sheriffs. All law enforcement swears an oath to the U.S. Constitution and to their state constitution, many of whom have never even read the Constitution. So swearing an oath is something they know nothing about. When you're dealing, and I'm sure as it gets closer to the border, you're dealing in situations where they are mostly constitutional sheriffs and they're looking to support and uphold their duties and uphold the law for the residents. How much of a disparity have you found in sheriffs who are really doing their job and sheriffs who are turning a blind eye to the situation that's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have found for the most part in law enforcement, especially at the sheriff's level and the deputy levels, these guys love their country. They swore an oath to the country, more importantly to their constituents, right? Constitutional sheriffs, elected sheriffs really matter. The appointed sheriffs are the ones that you need to watch out for. And so I'm against appointed sheriffs because the appointed sheriff doesn't have allegiance to the Constitution nor to their constituents. Their allegiance is to the elected leader who appointed them. So I think that's very clearly, and you're seeing that, by the way, play out in Oregon, states like Oregon, states like Washington State, California. There's some that are appointed up there as well. Along the border, there's a lot of really amazing sheriffs that I was privileged to do ride-alongs with, whether it's Sheriff Mark Lamb, Sheriff Daniels of Cochise County, Brad Coe of McKinney County in Texas. I mean, these sheriffs, they fight every day. Their guys are on the border fighting all the time. But I have come across in certain sectors where there was some sheriffs who did turn blind eye. And unfortunately, the reality is this. There is a small percentage who unfortunately can be on the take, right? The cartels are powerful. And the cartels also, what people don't understand, and this goes on whether it's in the United States or the migrant cartel activity over in Europe, they can bribe the sheriffs or those individuals, whether it's Border Patrol or whoever they are. And how they do that is you might have the best intentions, but if somebody's saying, I'm going to murder your family or your child, and they track you and they send photographs, because these people are evil and they do this type of thing. That, I've had where they've literally cut fingers off and sent body parts and said, if you don't do what we're going to say, you're going to see more body parts being shipped to you. And so this is a reality. This is real. It actually happens. And so some people are corrupt and they give cartel a lot of activity. But for the most part, I have found that these sheriffs work very hard. Law enforcement work very hard down at that border to secure our borders and to secure children and women from being trafficked.
Yeah. I would like to ask you what the experience like was for you when you first sort of discovered these rape trees. And then I want to ask you about slaughterhouses and stash houses as well, because I've heard you talk about that in previous interviews.
Yeah. There's no words. You hear about it, people talk about it, but when you're physically there in front of it and you see it, as a female, as a mom, it breaks your heart. The men on my team, these guys are ex-military guys. These guys are hardcore, and they're breaking down and crying because it's so vile and so disgusting. So it changes you. And by the way, there's it's not prejudice. There's no prejudice. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, green, purple, male, female. Trafficking, they don't have a lens. They don't care. And so when you have a little girl around 8 years old who have 32 different men's semen inside of her. And it's so mutilated down there that you can almost, it looks like raw meat that's been minced. This is the reality. And yeah, it changes you. Yeah. But I am asked this a lot. How do you go on? Number one, I'm a Christian, and God has given me and my team talent. I couldn't do this alone, by the way. I'm just the face, but I have an incredible team behind me that you'll never see their faces. And we fight because who's going to fight for that voice that you'll never hear, right? And so it's really important to know who you're supporting in this movement, because I can tell you also, I'm not going to name names, but you need to make doggone sure when you give your money to organizations that claim or say they are doing the work, don't just take it because you've seen them on a stage or they're celebrity or there's a name you recognize, because a lot of times those names you think you know and you can trust, they don't do the work. They ask them, show me physically where you guys have done the work. Show me photographs. Show me the statistics, quantifiable, where your money has gone to rescue a child or to change something. If they can't show you, or they, just go to our website, look at it. No, you need to know where your money's going to. And so I can tell you, my team with the slaughterhouses that you've just asked me about. So I'll give you an example. We were down at the border doing some work and doing some ride-alongs and filming, and we got word that over in Mexico, they're usually typically within 25 to 30 miles of the border. There's a slaughterhouse where some of these caravans, they would be earmarked and they would be driving to these slaughterhouses where they would literally have operations and take organs out. We worked with both the federales sometimes. There's a photograph that you saw on that video. That's me with the walkie-talkie working with some Mexican federales on the Mexican border. And so they intercepted a pickup truck, a dilapidated old pickup truck. Well, in that pickup truck, the whole back end underneath of a blanket was organs being transported to the black market. So this happens all the time. And one of the biggest buyers, by the way, is China. And so you have to understand that the evil that's out there taking place, and this just isn't in America. If this is going on in our borders, I promise you somewhere in the European Union, there's somewhere that this type of activity is taking place as well.
For sure. Yeah. We had Lee Dundas on, and she basically said that it doesn't matter how big your town is. If there's a motel there, trafficking is probably going on.
Well, Stu, there's also a misconception about trafficking, and I do want to touch on that. Everyone talks about the cartels and the migrants, which that we have right now. I still think 343,000 plus children missing from the Biden years. And from the falsehood and the paperwork that was done, and they were just turning over these children to anybody. It didn't really matter. So we're still trying to track them down. There's also sex trafficking. There's labor trafficking. There's different types of trafficking. I'll give you one another example. And we have a photograph of this. The cartels, they would drug the children. And on some of my videos, you'll see one of those photographs where we literally were in the middle of the night. It was 2 a.m. And this was over in Texas. And the children were so drugged, you couldn't even open, we had flashlights and we couldn't open up their eyelids. And so a lot of times what they'll do too is they'll sew drugs inside the children's cavities and carry them over the border. So there's multiple ways to do that. So those are horrific incidences. But trafficking goes on in your own backyard. And this is what I want your audience to understand. It goes on in the playground. It goes on in your school. It goes on in your neighborhood next door. It could be your daughter's boyfriend. We call it the Romeo effect. So they're very good at training individuals to target and groom, online grooming as well. So there's multiple different ways traffickers use. So we have to educate on all the different methodologies that the traffickers will use to lure children and women into the trafficking world. And one of the biggest, most effective one, I'm going to be honest with you, is the Romeo. They will start being really sweet, kind. They'll send flowers. They'll take her out to lunch or to dinner. They'll date your daughter. They'll use kind words, and they understand who to attack, right? They target individuals, and so they understand. You might have a broken home or somebody who is a little insecure, so they find these weaknesses within your personality, and they will target them. And then what happens is, after a while, after weeks or months, then they start separating. If you start seeing your child becoming more distant from the family unit, that's a sign. That's a telltale sign. And so what they're doing, they're isolating. And then all of a sudden they're going to say, well, if you loved me, you would do X, Y, Z. And then that's how it happens. So we have to understand all the different ways the traffickers start utilizing. And I know I'm going to be speaking at the conference coming up, and I'm going to talk about this because this is a subject that's not talked about enough, on what to look for and how to not be a victim of a trafficker.
And it's like you said before, trafficking, like the media, spans a whole bunch of different directions. And they do prey on families, they do prey on the weak, and they look very carefully for their targets. And it's rough because we've had so many discussions about the evils of child trafficking and the evils of the MK Ultra, all the programs that are put out by the governments themselves and by their agencies, and yet we fail to understand how a lot of it stems from the home to begin with, and then expands from there. And you have this is a battle of good and evil, and you have these evil people who prey on the weak. And when you've got a broken home and you've got problems at home, that's a weakness.
And a lot of people don't understand either, family members, aunts, uncles, or friends of family members. They groom, and they start at a young age. And so just beware of, who your children are hanging out with. My children very rarely, when they were younger, ever stayed with, not everybody has that capability, but you really need to understand, listen to the signs, listen to your children, talk to your children, even when they come home from friends' houses or from families' houses, ask them questions. Or if you see behavioral changes, that's a child starting to withdraw is a very telltale sign that something's going on, whether it's bullying or whether it's something else that might be going on. So as a parent, you really do just need to be in tune with your child and make sure that you're engaging and seeing the signs if something does change. Typically, those are signs, again, that something might not be right.
Yeah. Christie, can I just ask you, what is a stash house? Is that where they keep people before they take them to a slaughterhouse?
Yeah, so I think on some of my website, you'll see it. We were in a couple stash houses, and I've taken photographs and videos inside these stash houses. So they could be on both sides of the border, and typically they are. So they'll move the human assets into these stash houses, and they wait. Sometimes they have them buried underneath the ground with like a plywood underneath them, like a tunnel, and then they'll wait there until all of the things are in place. So sometimes if you have specific, whether it's going to, like, for example, a Super Bowl, right? So Super Bowls are huge uptick in trafficking. So they'll bring over a lot of individuals. They'll have them stashed in these stash houses, and then they stage them usually a couple weeks before, like, a major sporting event, and then they'll move them across the border. That's one way. So yeah, the stash houses are used on both sides of the border. Sometimes there's tunnels. Sometimes they'll just come over in cars, and they'll be just in the backseat of a car coming through the border. There's different ways that they do this and move the human assets for sex trafficking.
Wow. And how do they move all these organs? Is it very sophisticated? Are these, kept live organs after that?
Yeah, in coolers. I mean, on dry ice coolers, packed just the way they do on Medehack. They have the same way the hospitals move organs, right? It's in coolers. It's kept at a certain temperature. Sometimes some of them are spoiled. Sometimes they're not, because I promise you, when a cartel in the back of a pickup truck, when they're moving organs to a different area, sometimes those organs will get spoiled.
Yeah, well, this is one of the worst things we hear about this, isn't it? The fact that to have a organ in the best quality, they cannot use anaesthetic on their victim, can they?
Many times not, no. There's also plasma. If you ever gone along the border, you'll see all of these massive plasma banks. I thought that was really interesting. I think when me and my team were down there, we started everywhere we would go along the border, we would see these lines around this building. And we were like, what is these lines for? So we started investigating that as well. And we realized that illegals or migrants, or even, some who had day passes, they were legally able to come over. They had work visas to come over from Mexico, and they would have these lines around these buildings. And we walked into one of these buildings and we found out they were collecting plasma in these buildings at high rates. And paying, they would have to come 2 to 3 times a week. So the first time it was like $50. If they came again, it was $75, up to $150 for those individuals to come in across the border and give plasma.
Wow.
So there's a dark market for a whole lot of things. There's a legitimate market, which they'll wash it as legitimacy as well, right? So there's a lot of nefarious activity that happens down at the border when borders are unchecked.
Yeah.
And also when people, like you said before, are getting paid or getting threatened. And it allows, you have to wonder, are some of these plasma centers on the U.S. side?
Yes.
So you have
almost
to wonder.
All of them. Almost all of them.
And you have to wonder, why? Where are they getting all this plasma? Or all these people who live along the border miraculously being so charitable that they're coming in and donating plasma for whatever reason?
That's a whole nother subject for another day, right? Big pharma and what they're doing. So that's a whole nother subject. But yeah, I mean, I would question it. I was talking to actually some of my friends on the Reawaken America tour. You guys would know some of these doctors' names. And I was talking to Simone Gold was one of them I was having a conversation about. And I was telling her about these plasma banks. And she was really interested in that. And so were a couple other of the doctors, because I'm not in the medical field. But I can tell you from a security perspective, when I see certain things happen, it doesn't smell the sniff test, right? So you're like, something else is going on here, because why would they be paying so many individuals along the border to come over the border and give plasma? If this was such a legitimate business, why aren't they readily available across the United States in towns and cities at these blood banks, right? Now you see blood banks all the time, but specifically plasma banks, and that's what they were. So that was interesting to me.
It's amazing how many things go unchecked. And it goes back again to draining the swamp. All these things go unchecked. I know that we've heard a lot about it over the past year or so, the attack on the cartels and taking down the cartels, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it boils down to the management. It boils down to the politicians and the people running these countries and the people who run these politicians. Because if the head's rotten, so does the rest of the body. And when you watch these things be allowed in, we as Americans, we've become accustomed to expecting the least from other countries. We have this superiority complex, and we expect the least from other countries. But people have turned their heads so many times and turned a blind eye to it coming across the border and what's happening here and what is being allowed to happen here. And the investigations and the outrage should be with the American people. And I think that if it was to stop here and push to other places, it would have an easier time pushing to these other places if it did stop here. And that's why it's so important with you exposing a lot of this stuff, because people have to be aware. People have to stop hearing about child trafficking and about plasma banks and about organ sales, et cetera, et cetera. Stop turning away from it because it seems to be too hard, too difficult of a problem to accept. and understand the reality of it. And that we as a people have to have that righteous outrage and do something about it, as you have.
Well, there's two things you can do. The middleman is just the middleman, and we need to stop targeting the middleman. You've got the two entities that continue to allow trafficking and nefarious activity to happen, period, across the board, is the head of the organization and the buyer. And unfortunately, sometimes the buyer are people that we know, right? That they're celebrities, they're heads of corporations, they're heads of banks. And so sometimes the officials sometimes might not want to push that narrative because they feel like something might collapse, right? Which would have a trickle down effect. And then the heads of these organizations are typically, when people think of cartel, they think of the tattooed guys, right? You've got, the head of the Sinaloa and things like that. But in reality, there's always somebody over them, typically. And they have a lot of legitimate businesses because there's a lot of ways to wash money and funnel money. So when you start peeling back the layer and you figure out where this money is being washed to and the legitimacy into these corporations or these big businesses, those are the ones that have to be taken out. And it's complex, unfortunately. But in my opinion, we just need to wash it. We need to have people who are in federal law enforcement here in America at the highest of levels to not decide that the American people or the system can't handle the massive arrests that need to have happen and exposure that needs to have happened. America has survived 250 years. We've survived a whole lot of, we've survived wars. We've survived the Great Depression. We survived 2008, the crash, right? We can survive. It might be hard. It might take us some recovery time, but we'll survive. We need to have people who are willing to wash and sanitize the darkness and bring it to light, and then hold these individuals accountable, no matter who they are, no matter the highest level that in office they serve or the highest level in a C-suite that they are. We need to hold them all accountable. We need to start seeing arrests made if we have the legitimate evidence against them, but we need to start seeing accountability, real accountability. And that means in public court, in public opinion, by peers of their jury, to hold them accountable if they've done something wrong, and then convict them and see that through.
Yeah, and people are finding out every day that we are actually in a battle of good versus evil. And, the level of, people, in inverted commas there, that actually practice Satanism across this planet is staggering. And they do. Hurting a child is their ultimate goal, because that is the closest thing to God.
Yeah, we would come across some of the, whether it was a mule, a coyote, or a Mustang. They have different names for them, for different job descriptions that they do, right? It was always interesting because the tattoos would be very similar, or the necklace that they would wear. They would have the death Morta, Santa Morta, and then you turn it over and it would be Mother Mary. And it was so disgusting. And I have a photograph of one because we took a photograph before we turned them over. And so it's real. And they would eat organs, whether it was human organs or whether it was animal organs. If the animal organs was interesting because they believed if they ate like the heart or something like that, they would actually become that animal spirit and have some of those traits. So this is true. This isn't made up. And you can go and you can Google this. You can talk to sheriffs. They see it all the time on the border. These people really believe this stuff, and it's very satanic. I remember, I'll just give you another example. They're also doing satanic rituals against good, positive leaders. I was speaking at the Reawaken America tour in Arizona. And then Trump at the time was also having a rally. So I got off the stage at the Reawaken America tour, literally, and my team and my security team rushed me because I was going to the Trump rally and I had some things to do there. And Trump had just gotten done speaking as we were all leaving, and there was a woman sitting in satanic garb, and she was on her knees with a candle, and she had drawn on the sand around, and she was literally sitting there chanting and doing chants and casting spells at that Trump rally. And that's just one of many stories I can tell you guys. This stuff is real, and it's unfortunate that it's real, but we are in a spiritual warfare, good versus evil. It's really that simple. And they used the innocent. If you go all the way back throughout history and years, they use the innocent for rituals to give their allegiance to Satan in the dark world.
Yeah.
Well, it's the closest thing, like Sue said, the closest thing to God, but it's also the closest thing to any parent, any human being who's ever been a parent, a grandparent, or anything else. No one can really fathom the pain and suffering that you go through when you see a child of any age damaged, hurt, purposely. It's bad enough when it happens accidentally, but when it happens purposely, how it doesn't tug at a person's heartstrings, and the only people that it doesn't tug at are the people who are committing these crimes. But when you sit and you watch these things going on a daily basis, you hear the stories of people who were trafficked. You hear the people who were survivors. You hear of the people who were victims of grooming, et cetera, et cetera. All of these stories aren't just stories. They're not episodes of a TV show or anything that people are putting on. These are people who have lived these horrors. And I think while a lot of our audience happens to be awakened to this stuff, there are a lot of people out there who are still turning that blind eye because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to accept it until finally it hits your home. And then where do you turn? So when you're down and you've gone across the border, have you ever dealt directly with some of these people and spoken to them? It's hard to speak to them as human beings, but unfortunately they are. Have you ever spoken to them to find out what, besides, monetary incentive, drives them to do this?
Well, if you're specifically asking me about those who are in the trafficking world with the cartels, the cartels, they recruit at very young ages, just like Hamas and Hezbollah and all of these different militant organizations. They start brainwashing at a very young age and manipulating children. The cartels, sometimes at the age of 7 and 8 years of age, if they've been recruited and targeted that they're going to be groomed to be a soldier for the cartels for whatever nefarious activity they want to do, they show them rapes, like physical, like they sit there and they have to watch rapes being happen. They have to watch chopping up and murders being happen. They also have to murder somebody themselves. So they train the psychology of this child to be demonic and mean, if that makes sense. And so it's very difficult when you grow up in that and you're seeing that, and that's the culture, and that's what you're being bred to be as an adult human being. It's hard for them their soul's gone at that point, if that makes sense. So it's very difficult to reach them or get to them, because those are the individuals that the cartel entrust for the trafficking routes. These aren't just, individuals that were typically recruited as adults. These are individuals who have been within the cartel family from a young age and have been groomed to be able to withstand this type of evil, because they think it's second nature to them. It's normal to them. Mm-hmm. So just like in the Middle East or wherever else you are, and by the way, trafficking doesn't see color. It doesn't see economical, social status. It doesn't matter. They don't have a targeted individual. They don't care. Same thing,
you're groomed. So you can't change or rehabilitate these people. And I think that that's one of the biggest misconceptions. There's no 99.99%. There might be that 1.5%, but you cannot rehabilitate these people. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a proxy organization or whether you're in the cartels, because by the way, the cartels work a lot with Hamas and IRGC over in Central and South America. We've done a lot of work there. Hezbollah. So they all work together. They train together a lot, and they have the same philosophy and the same mindset on how you groom individuals to do the heinous acts they do. Because if you didn't groom them from a young age, I would really be questioning humanity because, again, I've seen this. So these people are groomed, and that's the reason why you can't have a rational conversation with them. You can't change them. This is who they are in their DNA, and they need to be locked away for the rest of their life.
Yeah, totally. So can I just ask you, is your team actually involved in actually arresting and taking down the cartel members of any of these people? And
we don't no, it's illegal for us to do that. So no, we don't do that. What we do is our organization, and I'll be I'll give you guys an example. So under Biden's administration, a lot of information that you saw coming out of the border and out of Central and South America, it stemmed and originated a lot from our intel and our information that we gave, not just to law enforcement or Border Patrol, but also to these other organizations who started coming down to the border and doing investigative journalism. So it stemmed from a lot of our foundation and our work. So it's illegal for us to intercept. It's illegal for us to, that would be kidnapping, right? So what we do is we do the hard work, and our teams go in and we do difficult things, but we make sure that we're staying above board right where the law is. And I can't get into some of the stuff that we do or not do, but we don't do anything that's illegal.
Yeah.
It's disgusting and mind-boggling, and it's not something that's new. You can go back to the Lindbergh baby. You can go back to the Eitan Payton first milk carton missing child. Do you see this coming anywhere near its end?
No. Unfortunately, I wish I had better news. We need to make sure that the money that's being donated are donated to organizations who can get the job done quietly behind the scenes. Whether you're in the military or not, if you have military listeners out there, you'll understand exactly what I'm getting ready to say. The loudest person in the room is usually the person who hasn't done. The quieter person in the room is the person who usually gets the job done. It's that simple. We need to have campaigns out there where we have awareness, but the organizations who are actually doing the work, that you'll never hear their names. You'll never hear them on the stage touting what they've done. They just don't do that because it defeats the purpose. This is a seedy world. It's an underbelly world. And to be the most effective, you've got to be the quietest in the room.
Yeah. I just want to put your website up there. It's wffa.win, and we can have a little look at your website if you like, if you just want to talk us through it.
Sure. So two things about my organization. We actually have Women Fighting for America. It is not a nonprofit. I'm going to be very clear about that, and that's by design. I underwrite 90% of everything that we do. Your money goes towards the direct fight. It goes towards education. It goes towards being able to keep the guys in the field to do what they do. We are completely transparent and accountable at all times. But we need to be able to do what we do without the gloves on. We also have, with the company I work for, I'm also a COO of a defense and security company.
We have a nonprofit called Kennedy Quick Reaction Fund. That is a nonprofit. And again, we believe in true altruism. Not saying that anybody else's models are wrong. We just have a different lens of how we see things. We give and pay for and underwrite any salaries, administration costs with our company, our business, because that's what we do. We take care of those expenses because we believe that if you're going to give money, whether it's a penny or whether it's more, I don't care what it is, that 100% of that money literally goes to the mission, not to administrative costs, not to salaries, not to paper clips or whatever that looks like. That money needs to go to the fight on the front lines. That's what we believe. And so that's how our organizations work. Women Fighting for America, I have put a lot of things on the line. I've been attacked. I've been called the most horrific names in the world. I've had the Southern Poverty Law write horrible articles about me. I actually wear that one as a badge of honor. Yeah. I've been called a white supremacist. I'm a Russian Jew. They didn't get the memo. I've been called, you name it, I've been called it. It doesn't really matter to me. People can attack me. The great thing about me is the fact that I have really big, broad shoulders, and I'm a pretty tough cookie. God called somebody to be the voice for the voiceless, and that's who I am. If you want to attack me, you can attack me. You can call me all sorts of names. Don't really care. You're really not going to move my needle. You're not going to make me upset. It's part of the game. It's part of how this works. And typically when somebody's attacking me, it's because I've hurt a nerve and or they're not doing something they're supposed to be doing and they don't like that, right? So we believe in the fight. We believe in this nation. We believe in protecting the innocent. It's that simple. I'm a mom. My team that I work with, these guys, they have children themselves. And the last thing we want to see is children or women being hurt, exploited by the evils in this world, because they're the most vulnerable, and it's not okay. And whether it's somebody at the corporate level, somebody in office, or just somebody on the street or a gang member, we're going to call you out. We're going to do the hard work. I'll give you a really quick example. One of the things we did, we went to California. We called it Operation Schoolyard. We were there for a week and we were doing undercover work because we got some intel, and it was about grooming and the cartels, these gangs who were working on the street outside of a Catholic school, and they were targeting kids and young girls when they were walking to their classroom or back home or going over to the playground. And so we were able to disrupt that network. Those are some of the things that we do. Again, you'll never hear about it because we don't want you to, but I'm going to tell you this because it's important for you to understand. It's not just border work. It's not just the bad stuff coming over the border and the networks coming over the border. They're here. They're in your communities. They're in your backyard. They've infiltrated. Whether you're living in Eastern Europe, London, or wherever you're living, they're there. They're in your communities and they're targeting your children. So you need to be the eyes and the ears. You need to be on the street being aware. And if you have some time on your hands and you're retired or you have special skill sets, press in, figure out where you can do. Go and just start asking questions. Walk the neighborhood. Start listening. Start looking around. It's amazing what you will find out when you actually put your phone down and you're not walking like this, but you're actually looking around you in the stores, on the playgrounds, in the movie theaters, in the malls. You'll start seeing things that don't look right, that don't feel right. Start being that awareness for people in your community and then activate.
Yeah. Exactly. Local action equals national impact. You've recently written a book as well, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I love that. Yes, The Plow, the Seed, and the Sun. This is 12 plus years in the making. I started writing this book in 2012, and I finally finished it. And it's part of my journey. I say some stories about what I've done, but it's really armed with faith, rooted in love, and sent to change the world. And again, I love all people. It doesn't matter the walk of life that you're in. It doesn't matter what culture you're from. I've been blessed to travel the world. I have friends all over this nation, all over this world, all different colors, shapes, backgrounds. You know, we need to have, and we don't always agree, by the way. God has called us to love, and in love, but in love, you can disagree in love. You can also push back in love. It doesn't tell you that you need to be a doormat, but we're all called for a purpose. Figure out what your purpose is, and then act out that purpose in this world right now. And again, we need to be bold. We need to be strong. We need to speak up, and we need to stand up against evil, no matter the consequence. Even if it personally affects you or attacks you, you still need to be that voice, because that old saying is so true. For evil to prevail, good men and women will remain silent. We can no longer be silent, even if it costs something. The cost of conviction and the price of conviction, your morals are so important to stand up in a world where people are afraid or polarized to say anything. And that's what the evil, by the way, that's what Satan uses. That's what the evil people use. They want to, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're an Islamophobe, you're all of these labels, right? You know who you are. I know who I am. I don't care. You can call me any name you want to. It means nothing. It's going to be like oil and water. It's going to go right off my shoulders. You're not going to shut me down. You're not going to shut me up from speaking truth, but I'm going to speak that truth in love. I don't need to be violent in the street. I don't need to be a violent protester. I don't need to try to run over police officers or bring batons and scream and spit in people's faces. I can do everything I'm doing with grace, with courage, and with love, but strength.
Yeah. Here to that, and I'm pretty sure Mark and I feel exactly the same, and everyone in our chat, they're all using their voices, and we are, even though there's disagreements about certain topics, we are all fighting on the same team to eradicate this evil from the earth if we can in the end. But I have a lot of faith that we will get that done at some stage.
You know, Stu, and there might be a time that comes where we have to turn to what the Constitution here in America says. When a government no longer serves the people, it is our duty and our right to replace such a government. So sometimes being righteous, when all else fails, sometimes you have to take up your sword. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and we need to make sure we're doing it in the right way.
Well, if you're going to do that over there, give me a shout. I'll come over and give you a hand, and then you lot can come over here and help me with mine.
Well, I offline, I was telling you, I spend time in London and in the UK at least once to twice a year. And actually, I think I'm going to be speaking. I was just named an ambassador for one of your major security events over there. So I will be coming to speak in the UK in the next 6 months. So.
Oh, wonderful. That's good. All right, then. Well, we've just, for anyone that doesn't know, our Awakening Summit is coming up in 66 days, Clearwater Beach, Florida. That'll be 3 days over the 16th, 17th and 18th of October. Mark and myself and Elisa are co-MCs for that event, and we've got lots of great speakers coming to this, including Christie. So this will be amazing. Just that is theawakeningsummit.org, and you can find all the information there.
I am so excited. And your audience out there, I would love to meet you in person, hear your stories, your thoughts, what you're doing. And even if you don't agree with me, I'd love to hear the fact that you don't agree with me and why. Let's have some dialogue. Let's open this up and let's talk and let's come together to fight the tyranny and the evil that is trying to take over our world.
Beautiful. Mark, final thoughts?
You know, we said it at the beginning of the show, and I'll repeat it now. We have to work together. We have to work as a team. We have to, Christie touched on it just a few seconds ago. We have weaponized adjectives, and it has to stop. It doesn't make a difference what color you are. It doesn't make a difference what religion you are. It doesn't make a difference where you're from. Okay, you cut us open, as a lot of these evil people do. We've got the same organs, the same color blood, and everything else. They divided us for a reason. Like Smokey Bear says, only you can prevent forest fires. Only we can prevent what's going on. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's a little dyslexic thing, but we've instead of becoming the United States, we've become the untied states. We've got to retie that bond, not just here, across the world. And we have to stop fighting each other, and we have to start working together to fight the evil. And the sooner we do that, and the sooner that we work together, the sooner this will be over.
We, the people, are the plan.
That's right.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Christie, for coming on. That's been amazing. And Mark as well. Thank you for joining us today. It's been brilliant. It's like you've never been away, sir, is it?
Well, I'll be turning back into Elisa in about half an hour. It'll be good.
Okay, brilliant. All right,
somebody commented that Elisa got a haircut.
Yeah. Thank you, Christie, for coming on. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone in the chat. We love you all. And Christie, if I don't see you before, I'll see you in a couple of months. And I'll chat with you soon, Mark, no doubt.
Thanks so much. God bless you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Children are the center of our world, and we do our best to show them that we care. But evil is lurking everywhere to steal their youth, kill their souls, show them things that they should never know. We live in the craziest of times, you never know what's in another's mind. We keep them safe, protect from bad, but they just choose to make them sad and keep their evil rituals alive. Who saves the children? We do, we do. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do. Who saves the children? We do, we do. And we'll fight to death to keep it safe for you. We'll fight for what's right with all of our might, and we won't leave one single child behind. They've been here since the dawn of time, and their actions take a twisted mind. But we won't stand no more. We'll track them down for sure and make sure that they are gone forevermore. Why can't you see the crimes committed on our kids by the powers that be? How long do we wait? How many must die? How many loving parents need to cry? Who saves the children?